is your biggest fear stepping into fatherhood? Am I going to eye roll the next one?
Yeah, I think
Of course.
I might get some evil eyes after this podcast. Do you think your incessant need to control everything is going to get worse or better as baby comes?
Top non-negotiables when parenting baby boy.
Education and is a fine line between that and indoctrination, and I think he might just have to go put up with that system. Like, no, he won't. You're like, oh my word, this is how kids should be taught. This is like how they can thrive. And
Some things that you liked about the way that you were raised. What would you like to do differently as a parent?
what concerns you most about me in this next phase?
Your honest thoughts about my pregnant body.
Like, think about a baby being inside there. It's quite a trip. Like, I feel like this whole pregnancy has been a psychedelic trip for me.
How are we going to navigate intimacy and stay connected? Spill the name. So, baby boy's name is... Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast. Today is a very exciting one. We are completely unprepared and unplanned. We're asking each other a couple of questions that we came up with literally on the spot, and all to do with parenting, pregnancy, and relationships. We did ask a couple of questions for those who asked on Instagram. We'll answer those at the end, and maybe we'll do a little name reveal because that was a couple of the questions that were asked. Spill the name. So listen to the end of the podcast if you want to potentially hear what baby R's name is going to be.
I didn't even know that was happening today. Very unprepared, but I think that's also the idea behind doing the season, was to have real conversations. And so this morning, when I was like, we haven't done a podcast this week, we need to sit down and do one, and we both didn't really have an idea, but we're like, let's just get some questions going for each other.
Let's just have a conversation, yeah. Some parenting questions that I want to ask you, or pregnancy questions I want to ask you, and let's see if this will get juicy or not. I have no idea what you wrote down. You literally wrote your questions down within 5 minutes. You're like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, well, so I went to yoga this morning, left Tara at home alone, and so I had a couple of thoughts, I suppose, during the morning. But when I said to you this morning, like, okay, what are the questions going to be about? You said we have to have a topic. Of course, you said we have to have a topic.
Otherwise, it's too broad.
I know. So Tara initially wanted to, the only thing on your mind you said was pregnancies.
It's front and center at the moment. There's really nothing else in my mind.
Of course.
So let's get those questions started. Do you wanna kick us off with your first question for me?
I think you got more.
I've got more. Okay.
So I think you kick us off.
All right.
The deal was to actually only have 5, and then I got home and Tara was like, I got 9 questions for you. I was like, fuck, okay.
Let's make this a therapy session.
Okay.
All right. So my first question for you is, what is your biggest fear stepping into fatherhood?
I think it's always on the practical, materialistic side. It's finances. I think as a male and having to provide, like, that's the biggest concern you have. Is like, everything else will be okay. Like, I'm not worried about raising kids and all of that. I think we've come far enough to navigate that and enjoy that process. I think it's just the financial thing that I think most people can resonate. There's always some extra expense, or the cost of living just keeps going up drastically. I mean, I went to the shops this morning to get a couple of things at Clicks, like some fucking toothpaste, and I walked out of there with like a small bag of like random things. It was like 800 rand. I'm like, this is like, shit's expensive.
Yeah.
So continuously keeping up with the cost of living, and at the same time, it's like this constant push to always be able to provide more and more and more. And I think that with a kid coming, that obviously gets ramped up. So I think that's the only real fear that keeps me sometimes a little bit stressed out. It's just finances. Like, that's why I think trying to create an abundance of money is not a bad thing, because it just frees up your life a bit. I mean, most of us spend most of our time worrying about money all the time. It's like the God all of us unconsciously pray to. It's just money, money, money for everything. So yeah, I think that would be the only slight fear, but at the same time, I also have faith that it's going to be okay. So I'm not like that stressed about it. I know I have options. I think I just don't want to have to leave home and go work away again, which is always the option to make money, because the money is good to go
Yeah.
work away, can go earn some dollars, but it's not ideal to want to be away from the little one that's on the way. So that's also not what I want. I just don't want to have to sacrifice my quality of life for money. I think that's the biggest fear.
Yeah, and miss those really crucial moments in the beginning of his life.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes so fast. He's going to grow so quickly, and so to make sure that you're home for that is going to be imperative.
I think so.
So finances.
Finances, yeah.
All right.
I think. All right, so kicking us off there. So,
Oh, gosh.
this is actually a very, very gentle question.
Okay. Did I jump you straight into the deep end?
No, I might get some evil eyes after this podcast. No, but this one, I was actually listening to a podcast on the way to yoga this morning, and the whole topic was on synchronicities, and I was listening to the conversation. It was really incredible. So I was thinking, like, what is the most interesting or the most memorable synchronicity that's happened around this pregnancy and this time of our lives that sticks out for you?
Sure. I mean...
And synchronicity, I mean, it's a whole other topic in and of itself.
No, for sure. No, I fully understand. I mean, the one that obviously sticks out to me is the whole... everything around his conception. Everything around his conception, from... I mean, even getting sick before, to changing my diet and stopping coffee because I was so sick with my H. pylori, to cancelling the wedding, and then having booked this retreat exactly when I needed it, and then him being conceived that week for his due date to be the wedding day. That for me, and I mean,
I think if we had to nail it down, that would probably be the biggest one, was the due date.
100%.
And the event of the...
Yeah, and his due date, the 11/11, I mean, those who are into numerology and whatnot, it's such a significant number. It's such a divine number. It's a number of hope and possibility and oneness, and everything's going to be okay. And I think that, for me, especially with the pregnancy being so anxiety provoking, it's always been such an incredible reminder, almost for him telling me, okay, Mom, it's going to be okay, 11/11. And I've seen that number so often this pregnancy. I think for me, that's his due date is for sure the biggest synchronicity, just to get me through the pregnancy, actually, that it's going to be okay and it's divinely guided, even though most days I forget. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot around all of that, but the synchronicity around that specific was very interesting. The way we were initially going to get married on that date, then we moved the date because none of it was working out, which in hindsight is such a good thing. And then we just didn't see the bigger picture. And then his due date is that day, and so
even
it reinforced from the beginning that it was meant to be clearly this whole pregnancy, even though you've had your doubts.
I've definitely had my doubts, and I think it's just natural. But yeah, his due date has been the most incredible reminder, and every time I see 11/11, which is often probably a couple of times a day, I always say, oh, hi baby, because for me it's his little soul reminding me that, hey Mom, I'm here, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, I've noticed the 11/11 thing also can get, a lot of people kind of dismiss it, but I've noticed when you notice those moments where you notice that 11/11.
It's very significant.
And it's very significant. And I notice that when I'm more in the flow of life, I see it more often. It's crazy. You know, when I used to fly and the numbers are everywhere, and it'll just be 111, like, and then you see it more often. And there's something like, there's a flow that you're in. That for me, it's almost like a whatever mystery there is in the universe. There's something coming through that's pointing out to you. That's like, I don't know what it all means, but there's something happening that's not coincidence when you spot that, and I like it. There's some mystery to it.
Yeah, that's why I really hope he comes on his due date.
Yeah,
even though he's a big boy. So I mean, not one of my questions, but a question that a lot of people ask us is, when do you think he's going to come? It's a question I'm getting a lot at the moment. When do we think he's going to come? And with the size he is at the moment, I mean, he's measuring 4 weeks ahead. I'm assuming he'll come maybe at 38 weeks. That's my gut feeling, but I really hope he comes on his due date.
Yeah, I'm not going to try and think of what I think because nothing ever works out that way.
Okay, so what are going to be your top non-negotiables when parenting baby boy?
Is to raise him in such a way that he doesn't behave like this dog here right now. Apollo, you are a bit too much at the moment, my boy. So if anybody doesn't know, our first child, Apollo, he's a bit special, very needy, and he demands attention. So he comes and knocks your hands while you're sitting down because he wants attention now. Or he wants to go for a WALK. I can't even say the word because he'll go crazy.
But it's a very interesting thing, speaking on the topic of parenting, is that he doesn't do that to me.
Okay, yeah, but you more...
He doesn't do that to me because I discipline him. I'm more strict.
I know,
so
he's my baby boy.
It's going to be very interesting to see how you parent.
We both come from challenged households initially. Shame. He's adopted as well. People don't know.
So what are your top non-negotiables?
Non-negotiables for parenting.
For parenting for him. So your rules for baby are... Like, or anything that comes to mind when you think of non-negotiables in parenting.
Non-negotiables in how I parent, or
in how you parent, or in how he behaves, or rules you want to set, or morals and values that are non-negotiable. Anything that comes to mind when you think of a non-negotiable when you're parenting him.
I think a non-negotiable will be to educate him on our terms. And not allow him to be educated by everything else out there, especially the school system. He won't be going to a normal school, or what is seemed to be normal in society, but as we learn, it's just crazy. So education and is a fine line between that and indoctrination. And I think private education or homeschooling will be probably something we look at, because the impact of other people and on your child, if not in alignment with our values and all of that, I think that'll just be a non-negotiable. It's like, there's not like, oh, he might just have to go put up with that system. Like, no, he won't. So that'll be a non-negotiable. I think in terms of how he's educated, it'll be very much not that I want to control it, it's just giving him the space to become his own person. And yeah, just, I suppose, being open to it all and learning throughout the process, and just creating the space for him to grow and not dictate what it is he must grow into or how he must grow. It's more just, I think the way we're going to bring up this child is different to most parenting styles. Yeah, I just think it's education and how we do it.
That was actually someone's question, asking whether or not we were going to homeschool, public or private. So you kind of answered that question in a nutshell, not so much.
Yeah, look, I think it's not something we have exactly all the answers to yet. But as we learn new things, and I listen to podcasts all the time on people are doing things differently, and understanding like how old the school system is for hundreds of years, or over like 100 years now, and the creation of it and like the intention behind it all. Actually, if you go back and you look at how things are done in the general schooling system, it's actually appalling that we make kids endure that. So we will be doing it completely different to most people in terms of what they just assume to be education is. And so whether that means homeschooling, whether that means getting private education, also there's incredible schools out there, like even the Waldorf way of teaching, which is based on like Rudolf Steiner's philosophy to some degree, or there's other schools out there which have a completely different way of teaching kids. And there was that interesting podcast on that guy who had the school in the States. I can't remember the podcast or the name of the school, but the way that they taught, when you listen to the podcast, you just listen to this and you're like, oh my word, this is how kids should be taught. This is like how they can thrive. And so I think figuring out the best way, I mean, we don't have the answers yet, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching. What was that podcast name, or that episode?
There's a guy with Jordan Peterson who did the interview on the whole schooling system, and it's so mind-bending.
If we can link that below.
I think we'll link it below, and like for those who want to open their eyes to like the schooling system, and
yeah, I just loved how
they can educate kids with like the way. It's so empowering.
No, it is. What really stood out for me was I think I mentioned this a couple of times to you when after watching it, was just how well-rounded the children were at such a young age, and being able to interact with different ages and feeling confident enough to debate or discuss topics that they weren't, that were just general knowledge in a group form, and their public speaking becoming such a a well-developed skill at such a young age was just it was just incredible to watch. And I have such a vision for our baby boy to grow up in that way and learn in that way and be so confident, especially with public speaking. I mean, we both know it's like the number one feared thing in the world. So if he can conquer that at such a young age, I think that'd be incredible. So yeah, finding a school that develops skills like that and is not so hell-bent on conditioning the kids, rather allowing them to grow and expand in whatever way they choose. So yeah.
Sounds good. All right. Okay, is it my turn?
It's your turn.
What has been, I mean, you can like read a book on how to ride a bicycle, and then until you ride the bicycle, it's a different thing. So being pregnant, what has been, I mean, good or bad, what has been the most unexpected thing you've had to go through, or just you did not expect for pregnancy?
I think the entire pregnancy itself was completely unexpected, and you know, in how you feel, in what you experience, in both emotionally and physically. No one prepares you for it. No one talks about it. And when I would ask other women, well, you know, is this normal? My whole pregnancy, I asked them, is this normal? Is this normal? And most of them tell me, I think so, but I forgot. And it's actually quite interesting because I didn't expect that. And it's a process. I mean, it's almost like when we reincarnate. It's a forgetting. We forget so that there's mystery. And every single woman I've spoken to who's had a kid within, you know, the kid's maybe 5 years old now, they forgot all the little pregnancy symptoms until I bring them up. And I think that process of forgetting is so that we do it again, and we don't never do it again. And we would all only have one kid if that was the case. And that's what most moms say. If you remember everything in your pregnancy, you probably won't do it again. And so it's very quick. Even me, I've forgotten my first trimester. But the most unexpected thing in pregnancy was by far the physical discomfort that I've experienced right the way through. I had no idea. I really thought that it was this magical little baby that's going to grow inside your tummy and you're going to go about your daily life. Yes, you might feel a bit nauseous, maybe a bit tired, maybe get some stretch marks, but I did not expect to be so uncomfortable and in so much pain the whole way through. I mean, the first trimester, you bombarded with period-like cramps and feel like something's tearing inside of you, and then the second trimester you've got round ligament pains that I couldn't get in and out of the car at one point. Barely walk for I think maybe 2-3 weeks of my second trimester, and then now in the third trimester again I'm on the couch almost every other day with some form of physical pain. So by far the physical discomfort has been very unexpected. No one talks about it. And you just see the photos and the videos of, a woman's pregnant. And
the fact that you're a lot more sensitive than most women, I will say that.
Yeah, and I think he's really big, and he's been really big since, I mean, from about 16 weeks, he's been a lot bigger than his measurement date. He's always been 3-4 weeks bigger than scheduled. So I think that also maybe plays a part, but you know, when I speak to other pregnant women, they tell me too, yeah, I'm so uncomfortable, I'm heavy and all of these things. But only women who are currently pregnant remember that. But when you speak to any other woman,
interesting.
Like, I think that happened to me, maybe.
Yeah.
Or you're reminding me of that happening.
Yes.
So yeah.
Okay, the whole ride, eh?
The whole ride. Wasn't expecting it at all. That's why I think the second pregnancy will be a lot easier.
Okay.
Mentally. Yeah, I'll know what I'm in for, unless I forget and we wait too long.
Let's see.
Okay, what are your honest thoughts about my pregnant body?
It's so funny because they have to have this tractor coming past our house at the moment.
Yeah, they're doing building next door.
Okay. Yeah, it's weird because it's clear that women overthink things like this, and you get so self-conscious, and you're very much about everything you have to be attractive for me and all the things all the time, and
it's hard to see your body change.
But I think I've just I haven't had any like thoughts on how your body is changing specifically. I mean, it's obviously incredible to see, but it doesn't have anything negative about it. It's just I've just mainly just been focused on you getting through the pregnancy and like the way your body is changing. I think you're carrying amazingly from behind. You don't even look pregnant from the front as well. Like, you haven't picked up any weight. You look amazing, and you're very self-conscious about it for some reason, about your body changing. But I think it's awesome, and I think it's beautiful. But so it's not like that's what I think about all day. It's more just like, I need to get you through another day.
But do you still find the pregnant body sexy?
I wouldn't say like sexy in a sexualized way, but it's definitely quite remarkable to see. And then even to like think about a baby being inside there, it's quite a trip. Like, I feel like this whole pregnancy has been a psychedelic trip for me. I haven't really wrapped my head around it.
Yeah.
That's I can feel him kick and that, but I haven't. It's difficult, and I spoke to your mom about it. Like, it's difficult for the male or the partner to really be connected to the pregnancy because we're not experiencing it. So we can, and I think there's an expectation from your side that I need to be more involved, but I can't. There's nothing more I can do. I can witness it and try out space for you to go through whatever you're going through, but it's still quite surreal to see your belly like that. And I know logically there's a baby inside, but I think it'll be more real when he comes. But I think I've kind of gone off topic of the question, but yeah, I think it's phenomenal to see how your body's changing, how big your boobs are growing, and how your body is like, you're maturing into like a mother. Yeah. The motherhood is definitely happening, the transition from like a child to a mother. It's quite phenomenal.
I remember when my boobs were, because they were the first things to start growing, like exponentially, obviously in the beginning. And I went from nothing before. I was like a negative A. I used to say they indented. They were so small. I will never forget you saying to me, you were so shocked at how big they grew so quickly. You said, "Love, are they going to stay like that?" And I had this image in my head of this meme or this thing on Instagram where it's like, most moms will know, before your boobs are all perky, during pregnancy they're like massive, and then after pregnancy and breastfeeding it's like one's hanging down this way and one's facing the opposite way. So I just remember turning to you and be like, no, love, they're not going to be like this after pregnancy.
That's beautiful in its own way. I know you got this thing against aging, but I think it's to age gracefully is pretty cool. And that phase of being in your 20s in this youthful, like, idea of beauty that our society has, that has to die for something else to come through. So what's coming through now is a new beautiful chapter of like so much more meaning and value and all the things than trying to have this picture perfect bikini body that is, what our society puts on a pedestal.
I know.
So the whole thing around it, like, I'm looking forward to getting older. I feel like life gets better as I get older. So like,
that's going to be a whole new process for me, is to love. I think I'm going to love my body a lot more once he's out, because most women say they look at their body afterwards, and even the stretch marks and everything that occurred during pregnancy, it's like, yes, my body housed my baby, and it's kind of just those battle scars of remembering what your body provided it. So I think it'll be a whole nother journey of self-love, but I have heard it's a beautiful one. So
good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
am I going to eye roll the next one?
Yeah, I think so. Cool. Do you think your incessant need to control everything is going to get worse or better as baby comes? The daily arguments we have. This is the topic.
Okay, so those who don't know, I have all my anxiety. I have all my anxiety throughout this pregnancy. It's obviously a lot to do with having miscarried before, but I think because having miscarried before, I've been wanting to try and control every factor of this pregnancy, and like I've mentioned in multiple posts and stuff, and I'm trying to remind myself that pregnancy is my biggest lesson in surrendering. And I'm finding it so hard to just release control on something I want so badly. And so I've been trying to control every aspect of this pregnancy, from what I put in my mouth to what environments I'm in to how the baby's growing, even though that's impossible. I want to know exactly what position he's in all the time. I want to know if he's grown. I want to know if he's, I don't know. I want to know everything.
I want to know everything all the time.
I want to know everything. I want to know if I've got a bladder infection. I want to know if my liver's functioning. I want to know, all these things that cause so much stress, but I know the only little things I can control to potentially save the pregnancy is what I've been trying to do. So that's what you mean by is my control issue's going to get worse.
And that's the thing, to say that the whole wording around that, to save the pregnancy, it's a tricky one, because there is only there's nothing to control.
No,
your body's doing its thing, and
I know that. I know that, and I think before I fell pregnant, I think we had this conversation. Well, I had a session with a online coach, and my control issue was there discovered, and so it was before the pregnancy, and the pregnancy's just amplified it. But
that's what I mean. I think we all have traits we can see that we inherit from our parents, and I have some, and you have some, and I think there's different ways we've come into the world and certain patterns we have. And I think long before the pregnancy, you've always been very much, you know exactly what's going on. You get this done, you do this. Everything is always just calculated, and you know it. Mm. And so I think a big challenge for you is trying to surrender control, but because your need to control everything is what constantly keeps you stressed out and keeps me having to stop you from rushing to hospital. So going back to your question, so the question
is it going to get worse?
How are we gonna navigate this going forward? Because if it goes any worse, it's not going to be good.
As
do you think it'll get after the baby's and he's finally do you think you're still going to be stressed out about something? Or because since the beginning you've always thought, okay, if I get to this point, if I get to 12 weeks, if I get to this scan, if I get to this thing, you always move the goalpost as to when you will be okay in your head, but it always gets moved. So my question is, do you think that's going to continuously happen, or do you think it's going to get reined in?
From where I stand today, I genuinely believe that it will get better after pregnancy, because right now I feel like all the weight rests on my shoulders to make and give birth to a beautiful, healthy baby. And so it's very hard to, navigate or decipher whether or not something is an issue that needs to be seen, or if I'm just overreacting and it's a normal pregnancy symptom. So I feel like there's a lot of pressure on me to make the decisions or not make a decision. And so it at least will be shared when he's out. You'll be able to see him, I'll be able to see him, someone else will be able to see him. At the moment, I'm the only one who can feel him. So I really do think that it will get better when he's out, because it's not going to feel like my sole responsibility to make sure he's okay. And he'll be out and healthy and all the things. And even if he does get sick and whatnot, like I said, you'll be there to help me navigate it. So I won't feel like it's all my responsibility. So I genuinely feel like my control issues will be a lot better. But I do also think I'm going to struggle a little bit with.
I think also trying to recognize that it's not like we've been putting in all the work to make him. He decided, I think we both believe that to come in, as all souls do. So your body, there's no control you have over that. Obviously you control how you try and keep your environment and food and all the rest. And then even when he's whatever he's going through might be what he's decided to come through and experience. So.
No, but it's easier said than done when you're the mother.
I know that. So I'm not saying it's something we're going to just accomplish, but I think trying to keep that perspective the whole time helps, to try and take a step back and be like, actually, we don't actually have control over anything.
Yeah, I know. Is there even free will? That question I ask myself all the time. Things are so divinely planned, and there's he was always meant to come in the way he came in. And as I've discussed with you before, just the paths to cross for us to meet, to conceive him and make it all the way go back as a snake eating its tail. Where does the beginning even start? And it's like that show Dark, the beginning is the end. And so I know in my soul, I know in my heart that everything's going to be okay and everything is going to happen exactly the way it needs to, but my mind gets in the way and I try and overanalyze and understand, and that's where my control issues come in. So
it's always the mind, isn't it?
It's always the mind, so I need to quiet the mind. But yeah, I think for me the biggest thing in parenting is going to be to not try and control his every outcome when he is as he's growing up, because I think as a parent you want the best for your child. You have all these goals and aspirations and you want to protect them as best as you can, but ultimately everything, like we just discussed, going to unfold exactly the way it's meant to. So that for me is going to be a hard one, to release control of how he's going to end up.
And that's the thing, I think it's going back to the homeschooling topic, was I don't want to control every aspect of it, because he needs to learn what he needs to learn, but create the space for that to happen. That's what we can do as parents. We can't control everything, but we can just create the optimal environment for him to flourish in. And so whatever that means, schooling wise, learning, all those things, we don't have the answers to it, but trying to remember that we have very limited control over this in this virtual reality that I think we're in. And it's a beautiful experience, and all the good and bad, all the things, it's just labels. And I think getting the mind out the way is always the hardest part.
Yeah,
because the mind creates all the problems.
Yeah, I'm excited to see with everything we've done, I think that's been the biggest blessing with all the journeys and work we've done. I'm excited to meet and discover his soul and know that he's coming in to teach us and not the other way around. So in that sense, I feel like that's going to help me release a lot of control, because he's coming in with a much higher purpose than I could ever put on him. And so, yeah, I'm just excited to meet him, excited to meet his little being and see how he grows up and what his personality is going to be like without any interference from me, just guidance. I think that's what I'm going to try and do, just guide wherever possible. I think
that's
love.
where we'll balance each other out. Because I'm sometimes too much the opposite.
Okay, so what are some things that you liked about the way that you were raised, and what would you like to do differently as a parent?
I enjoyed the excitement of being raised in quite a chaotic environment. I mean, my dad and mom were divorced when I was very young, and my dad worked away, and we stayed with my mom, and then my dad would come back, and then we would spend time with him. And when we were with him, it was always like exciting, because we used to have motorbikes, and we used to have, like, we could basically do whatever we wanted. He very much spoiled us in that way, and both my parents tried their best in their own way, and in its own way, like, everybody has these kind of trauma stories from divorce and that. Yes, and I think there was aspects of it that was not great and that I later had to work through, but overall I very much enjoyed it, the structure of it. I enjoyed the chaos in its own way, and it was always like I had quite an exciting childhood. Like, we used to do cool things, and like as boys, like just being able to play outside and ride bikes and just all the things I enjoyed. My dad and my mom, we all, although there was lots of drama, like as kids, it was in its own way. I remember having a good childhood for the most part, but that's also a double-edged sword. I think what I would do differently is focus on my own. Yeah, it's tricky to not. Let me try and rephrase this. I think your child looks up to the way you behave, and so recognizing that is like, you can say 10,000 things, it doesn't matter, but like what you do is what ultimately matters. It's not what you say, it's what you do that leaves an imprint. So I think really being aware of that will be something. Lead by example. And yeah, I think in some respects I think we tend to, or the older generation, I don't think and I think we're only learning this these days, and I don't think there's anybody at fault, but I think kids are a lot more aware of things than most adults kind of assume. And we know this if we think back to when we were kids, we were aware of things that your parents never ever thought you would even pick up or be aware of. So being aware that they are aware of everything that's going on is quite something that I would focus on.
Yeah, something that we learned is that, the most pivotal years of a child's life is between 0 to 7.
The first 7 years.
Yeah, the most influential. And so I think it's going to be
well, it's like a
vital
computer
for us.
downloading programs. So I think you're in that theta brainwave stage for the most part. And so you're just downloading everything, you're just soaking everything up, and that becomes your software that runs through your life.
Unconsciously.
Unconsciously, yeah. So everything that happens the first 7 years is crucial to who you become, unless you then have to go through and dive deep and work out all things that maybe were good or not good or whatever. But that first 7 years is pivotal to how it shapes your programming in your head and, and your way of being.
I mean, it's the analogy of the sponge, and I think that's where you soak up the most, is those first 7 years of your life. And it's from what you see, what you're exposed to, what you hear, and I think we're going to do our utmost best for those first 7 years to be as good as possible for our children, and do the best that we can. But I remember as well, I mean, I have a very horrible trait of not really being good at sharing or giving, and that I think is mostly due to the fact that I was a single child until the age of 7 before my other younger sister Kyra was born, and I was never taught to share, really. I mean, every time we even went to go buy, my mom spoiled me so much, and I was the only child for so long, and I was her little girl that, I mean, bless her soul, she did the best for me, and she was a young parent, and I love her to bits. I had the best childhood. But even when we would go get presents for my friends for birthday parties, I would get the same present. So we weren't just getting it for my friend, I would have to get one too. And that has now rippled into my older life, not being able to really, not being able to give, but not giving easily.
Tara can't even share like a piece of food off her plate with me. That's how deep her non being able to share.
It gives me anxiety.
Tara can't share anything. Like, if I want to have a bite of her food, it's like, you swear I've just ruined her day by asking.
I'm like, how dare you ask for my food?
And if we get something to share, Tara will have anxiety until she's physically shared it herself, so that I have my portion and she has her portion. We can't like share the same thing together. It has to be divided equally, because God forbid she gets but yeah, I think that's interesting, because a lot of only children exhibit that quality, I think.
Yeah,
because they're used to just getting things for themselves and not used to sharing. I think that's the bonus of having siblings when you're young.
100%. And someone else's question was, are we going to have more than one kid? So I think we can answer that now. We can almost interlink the questions people had for us, and just going on that, definitely, it's like we noticed that with our dogs, just having one dog, he was not as active, not as happy, not as playful. I mean, his toys weren't even being used. They were just being shredded in the garden, whereas we got him a little brother, and they play 6-7 times a day together, keep each other fit, keep each other company, keep each other, using their imaginations and having the zoomies around the garden and playing. And the toys actually get played with now the way they're meant to, tug of war and whatnot. So I think the same goes for children. You need to have that sibling company to learn sharing, and to learn how to play, and to communicate, and to be a companion. And the older one will learn how to lead, and the younger one will learn how to annoy the older one, because that's always how it goes.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing, but also sometimes a single child is the journey that family needs to go through, or that maybe we only have one kid. Who knows? We don't know. I mean, I think we have ideas of what we want. Definitely want to try until we have a girl.
That's for sure. I really want a little girl, even though I'm so excited for my little boy. Yeah. And I do genuinely feel that there's 2 boys and 1 girl waiting for us. So.
I still get that feeling. I think 3 kids will be it, as long as we have enough money. That's the plan, just to manifest money, and then just do whatever we want. Yeah, that's the plan. Okay.
What's next, Maestro?
What scenes, it kind of leads from the last question, like we've had sometimes your need to control things sometimes reaches over into my life, and sometimes, I mean, I have a bit of a questionable past and all the things, but what concerns you most about me in this next phase? Because I think sometimes I stress you out, or your idea of how things need to work out or be, or all the things. And
I know exactly the answer to this question. What stresses me out in the next phase of life is...
Okay, give me 2 seconds. I'll take a wee.
Pause. I also need to wee. All right. So going back to your question, it's not a bad thing, but you're such a nice person. Generally, you're always happy-go-lucky and easygoing and free-spirited to some degree, and so my biggest concern is that I'm going to have to be the strict ugly parent because you don't know how to discipline. To be honest, that's the only thing I can fault you in. Other than that, I feel like you're going to be an incredible father, but I just worry that this little boy is going to have you wrapped around his finger so tight that I'm going to have to be the wicked witch of the West and discipline him like I do our dogs. And you're going to be the fun parent, and I'm going to have to be the horrible parent. So that is my only concern, to be honest.
Well, I think if we raise him right, you won't have to be a wicked parent. It'll just be... And I think I've learned over time that the way that if you give too much or you're just too carefree about certain things, then you can ultimately create a monster. If you just give a child all that it wants all the time, it's not exactly going to be a good setup for them later in life. So I think I've listened to like probably thousands of hours at this point of like people like Jordan Peterson stuff, and so I'm very much aware that like I don't think we ever have to be difficult, but there'll be certain ways of parenting that'll just be non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And then that's fine, but within that it'll be like very like that book that we read. It was actually very interesting. There's very strict boundaries, but within those boundaries there's lots of free reign to do whatever you want. So you don't micromanage their whole life, but there's very hard limits on what's acceptable, what's not.
Speaking of, we haven't actually even discussed that yet. It's something we should probably discuss later on.
I think we've got an idea though from all like the stuff that we've learned up until this point. And like I don't think to have it all figured out right now in terms of how we're gonna. It will be as each phase comes. It's like, oh, okay, this was how we do this phase properly.
Yeah, I watched a very special video of two parents talking about the biggest parenting advice and tip they can give other parents is to teach their children that mom and dad are a team. Because ultimately, you know, a happy home is when you know it's a happy marriage and everything else comes with it. You know, if you prioritize your kids instead of your marriage, that's when the household falls apart. And so they teach their children that your mom and dad are a team and you never divide the team, and that's the number one non-negotiable in the house. So, you know, one child is not allowed to ask one parent. If one parent says no, they can't go to the other parent because that's dividing the team. And it was so sweet to watch a 4-year-old teach a 2-year-old not to divide the team because mom and dad are a team. You don't divide the team. And it was just so sweet to just teach your children that we are a unit. You and I, we are separate people, but as parents, we're a unit. We're a team. We're not enemies. And I think that's going to be a great thing to teach. And then a
child learns manipulation that way. If they get away with one thing undercover with you and then not with the other parent, child's very clever. It starts to learn how to manipulate. Whereas, that's a very cool lesson.
If mom and dad are on the same page all the time, and even if we're not, if we step outside, try our best to, in the heat of the moment, step away from the child and not let them see us fighting over something is going to be a great way to teach him that, you know, he can't manipulate us and twist either of our fingers against one another. So,
that sounds good.
Yeah, a team.
Okay,
so how do you think we are going to make sure that our relationship stays strong? I suppose that kind of leads off onto the question or what we just spoke about now.
Yeah, I think that was my last question as well, is how we're going to keep the fun and romance alive moving forward.
Yeah, it's also part of my other question is how are we going to navigate intimacy and stay connected when having a child. And I think it's going to be new to both of us because we've never had a child to come between our intimacy or our fun, and it's just always been you and I. I mean, the biggest thing we've had to navigate is dog sitters for the dogs when we want to go somewhere, which has been a challenge. But I think
it's just recognizing also what phase of life we're in. There's phases when you're younger, and then there's phases where you have a lot more fun. Maybe there's phases where you're a lot more intimate or whatever, but maybe for the infancy phase, not having expectations that we're going to have great romantic times together for the first year or whatever, but there's something else busy happening. But also not to negate that, and I think just obviously prioritizing time to do date nights and do different things and do the things that we like to do by ourselves and try and get get help if we need it, and not just like get too lost in the baby as well.
I think we're gonna really have to prioritize communicating, like once a week check-ins, like put it in the diary. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Are you feeling a bit disconnected? Because that is something that a lot of dads go through, that I've heard, is that, you know, the mum's very much involved with the baby and they've got this newfound bundle of love, and the father gets kind of pushed aside to some degree. And I obviously don't want that to happen, even though we will be in a new phase of life and it will happen to some degree. But I think to like do check-ins and make time for each other as much as we can, as best as we can, even if it's just sitting on the couch together with baby on the side or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to have issues at all, because I mean, people make it sound like it's okay. Obviously, we're not there yet, but I don't think. I said this yesterday. I don't think it's going to be that hectic for us, because I'm not planning on leaving. So I'm going to be here every day.
Yeah,
we run our business from home, so I'll probably be doing a lot of that while you're busy with the baby. But I think we'll just have to manage it. And I think even doing the podcast once a week will still become time to just check in.
Yeah, I think just check-ins, and just committing to some time alone with each other. And just whenever there is time to be alone, grabbing it by the horns. I
think it's going to be, you have to prioritize, because even with the dogs, you notice they take up so much of your time and they need attention, they need to be walked, they need all the good things. And with the baby, that's going to get 10x the level of sacrifice to your own personal life. And then, but yeah, I think it's somewhat exciting. I think it's a cool thing to navigate.
Yeah, I mean, we've had now 4.5 years of just you and I together. So I really feel like we've laid the foundation of our relationship quite well. I mean, we've been through hell and back together, and so I think we're quite solid for the next phase, and I'm excited to add a new addition to the home.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
Yeah, so the answer to that question is we don't know yet, but we're going to do our best.
We'll keep you updated.
I just want to quickly check here. If there's any questions that people asked that I didn't answer. Okay, one of them, obviously one is the name, but someone also asked, what are your most important things to be like-minded in when raising baby, and how are we going to consciously evolve from there? So what are the most important things to be like-minded about when raising baby boy? I think we're very like-minded with most things. Luckily, we've walked this path together, and I mean, like, we've already spoken to the schooling system. I'm very much on the same page as you. I've watched the same talks as you, read the same books as you.
Yeah, it's a weird one, because in so many ways it must be like-minded, but in so many ways, like for the first part, your role in his life will be a lot more profound. So like we can't always necessarily be on the same page, but in that case I'll trust you must do what you need to do in the situation. So I mean, but
I think in terms of like being like-minded in terms of like morals and values and stuff, I mean, we're very like-minded in obviously diet now and spirituality and I think
it's a general way of doing life.
Yeah,
it's just
but even
a very natural way of living, and
a very natural way of living, as little stimulation and conditioning as possible from external devices and social media and schooling systems and TV, and, you know, being outdoors like we are, I suppose, living the life that we live, being barefoot as often as possible, not confining his little feet to shoes, and letting him develop properly, and making movement and play and all of that more important than, you know.
Yeah, I think it's just our lifestyle will become to some degree his lifestyle, and I think we do live a different lifestyle to most in I suppose, if you look at the society we live in. But yeah, I mean, in our own way, I think prioritizing the simple things and not chasing after things that we think are going to make us happy, but enjoying all the small things, like going to the beach and walking the dogs and just being with each other, and all of that I think will become priority. And I think in that way we'll be like-minded in terms of that'll overflow into how we raise him, and to prioritize family.
Yeah, I think that's... Bless you. Oh, it didn't come. Oh, there we go. Oh, no. Okay, and then the last question, I don't know if you want to or not, but lots of people are asking what is his name. Obviously, I did a Q&A on my Instagram, and I had about over 40, 50 guesses with the name R, with the letter R for baby boy's name, and no one guessed it.
I don't know how I feel about it now. But if you want to share the name, you can do it.
We don't have to.
I can always cut it out. So if you don't see this, it's been cut out.
Okay. Baby boy's name is Rogan.
Yeah, Rogan James.
Rogan James. So we're very excited for him, and
Yep.
yeah, very excited to become parents.
Yeah, it wasn't our first choice, but it kind of grew on us, and then it was initially our second choice, and then we just decided, no, it's actually quite a strong name.
When we found out,
Rogan.
when I found out the gender, since finding out he was a boy, I couldn't get Rogan out of my head, and so I just kind of threw that to the fact that he was communicating with me and choosing his name. So
yeah, it grew on me as well. Initially I was like, I don't know, but yeah, there's something else I think is, it's a good feeling.
Yeah, it is a good feeling. It's a strong
name.
Don't know any little boys named Rogan, and I think he's going to be very special.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, thanks for tuning in, thanks for listening, and I enjoyed sitting down and asking you these questions.
Yeah, it was something different.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we're trying to plan a big topic is to some degree a little bit forced. Not forced, but you want to speak to something, and so, but sometimes on the fly is good.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in, guys. If you don't already, follow us on Instagram and reach out if you have any questions or if you want us to chat about other topics, because this is very much going to be just a interactive conversation once a week, I suppose. And sometimes we'll have topics, but sometimes we'll just be whatever.
I think I also might,
Okay.
all good.
I love you. Goodbye.
I love you.